Just got some scrap pieces here, so I'll just use this. If you want, you could just be using full sheets, but I just figure why not. And then you'll also need a Sharpie, steel T-square, and then you'll also need the circular saw. So first thing you want to do is you just want to line up your T-square for the volume that you want to make, and you can change the angle as much as you want to whatever really suits your needs. But for the sake of the one I'm going to do, I'm just going to pick this angle here. Doesn't really matter, just draw a line on there. And then after you got that one, you're going to need your top angle. But that actually looks pretty good. And you can make these a lot bigger than I am, obviously. I'm just making a small one just because I have these small scrap pieces. So we'll just mark this one up too. And make sure your lines extend off of it a little ways. It'll be really helpful for when you have to cut it out with your circular saw. I mean, we're not going for perfection, but close to it. Okay, the next thing you want to do is you want to take your circular saw. It should have a bevel so you can turn it to 45 degrees. Mine goes max to 45 degrees. So I'm just going to lock that up on 45 degrees. And when you're making these cuts, you want to make sure they're all either slanted in from the way you're looking top down or out. They should all be in the same direction. So make sure you have hearing protection, put that on, and you can start cutting. So now we want to cut out the second one. This will be one side. You'll end up making 3 pieces in total. So what you do is you just line it up. However, this is a scrap piece, so I don't really care. But if you had a big piece of OSB, you'd probably want to lay it out so you'd know how much excess you'll end up having, so you don't waste a ton of your wood. But like I said, as this is a scrap piece, it doesn't really matter. So just trace this out. And I like to take my square and just trace these lines again, just so that they extend further than I need them to. It just makes it a lot easier. And it doesn't need to be perfect, as you'll see later. Okay, so we'll cut this one out. You have these two cut out. I want to just roughly compare them, make sure they're approximately the same size. They're pretty close, so that'll work for me. You can play around with them a little bit first, but sometimes it's just easier to trace the next one out after we screw or nail this together and glue it. So that's what we'll go do next. So we'll lay them down. Let me scoot back here so you can see. Make sure to use plenty of glue. Get this stuff out of the way. We don't need any of this. Okay. Don't be stingy with the glue. That's where the majority of the strength comes from when you're joining these together. Okay, and we will get these together quickly before I lose all of my glue I just put in. And what I'm doing here is I'm lining up the top corner with just my finger, making sure that feels good before I start putting in any nails. So you can just kind of hold it in place a little bit and set a nail. So there's one. Yep, still feels pretty flush. There's two. So now I can just flip it like this. Excuse me. Hold the spines together. And you don't need an air nailer for this. You can always just screw them together, especially if you're using 1-inch OSB like you should. And it tends to come out pretty good when you screw them together too. So don't feel like you need an air nailer. You definitely don't. I just like to use it just because I have it. And we'll come back over this, add a little bit of glue into the seam. Okay, so that should be good, and now you can see, I mean, it's just roughed out together. It's not so bad. I mean, I'm pretty happy with it. And now we will go and make the top piece, and we'll go do that. Okay, so we're going to make our top piece next. So we will just take another piece of scrap wood, and then just line this up. Again, doesn't need to be super precise. And just start tracing. Make sure to mark your corners. Okay. Now, line up the square and trace that corner. These as well. Okay, so we will cut those out real quick. Okay, so there's that. Should piece together pretty well. We'll see how it goes. And then, yeah, we'll go glue this one together. Okay, so then we're going to glue that end piece that we cut. I forgot to mention something, by the way. Make sure that your angle from here to here is wider than 90 degrees, because if it's smaller than that, this method won't necessarily work. So just keep that in mind. So we'll glue up these two sides. Again, plenty of glue. And you're probably thinking right now, like, oh, that's not that great of a fit. We'll just wait and we'll come back after we nail it together. guess you can wait, or we can do it right now. But make sure to give it a lot of pressure to really pull those sides in together. This is looking pretty good, so the next thing we'll want to do is we'll drill our holes. So let me grab a drill. You'll want a 7/16 drill bit. And generally on mine, I will mark out the holes where I'm going to do them first. And I'll use a straight edge just to make things look symmetrical. But since this is such a small one, I'm really only going to put a few holes in here anyways. So we'll just line one up and put one right here. They look pretty good. Sand off the front. Where a putty knife is really nice, because we have these holes and a whole bunch of excess on there. So now that we've got that, I will pound in my nails, or my T-nuts. We've got the T-nuts in there. Okay, so now we're going to want to prime the volumes before we paint them. So you want to just prime it a little bit. Doesn't need to be beautiful. Painting happy trees, I guess. Happy little trees. Bob Ross, anyone? Okay, lame joke's over. Keep on painting. You're going to want to fill in the holes that you drilled, so that way you're not getting sandy paint in there, just because, you know, that's going to be a pain in the butt to get out later, and it might ruin some of your bolts that you stick in there. So I just take some painter's tape and I wad it up and I just jam it in there. And that seems to work pretty good for me. Usually you want your primer to dry a bit, but now to add the texture, you'll want to get something to mix your paint in. Let me make sure you guys can see. Yep, okay, so I've got some play sand here that I've sieved out all the really thick bits, just because I want it to have a nice uniform texture. So I will grab my thing of latex paint. Again, make sure it's mixed up. And I'll pour in some paint into here. Oh, that should be good. I don't have a magic ratio for this or anything. I kind of just add some sand and mix it together. You see how it goes. You're kind of looking for consistency that's like part way between, well, and you could do it other ways too, but I just like consistency that's part way between sheetrocking mud and latex paint, because you can actually use it to fill in some of the gaps on your volumes. All those holes are filled, and now you just want to slather it on. that. You let it dry for like 24 hours, and then you should be good to go. And that's all there is to it. Thanks, guys.